Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Kelly Jessup and I'm the Assistant Director for Digital Learning here at Yale School of Management, Executive Education. Hope you're doing well today and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us for this introduction to Yale's CIMA prep course, which is Investment Management Theory and Practice. We've been offering this program for about 8 years now, and during that time, we've worked with thousands of candidates. We encourage you to engage during this webinar today. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. This is your time. Our program director, Jim Dobbs, is very knowledgeable, and this is a great opportunity to pick his brain and ask any questions that are on your mind. To ask questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any technical issues, you can send those directly to me using the chat function. So now I'd like to introduce our program director. Jim Dobbs is CIMA certified. He's also CFP and CPWA certified. He was a financial advisor for 25 years and ran his own RIA practice before retiring to work full-time in his financial education company. Jim has worked with different certifying bodies and universities for the last 20 years, helping to build and manage financial certification programs. More importantly, though, Jim has had extensive experience with the Investments and Wealth Institute, which is, of course, the certifying body. He personally helped create the CPWA certification and has served IWI in many roles, including as chair of IWI's Technical Advisory Board. You'll see he's passionate about what he does. Jim is committed to success, and he measures his success based on yours. Please welcome Jim Dobbs.
Oh, thank you very much. Kelly, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. And yeah, a couple thoughts right out of the gate here. So this is your time. We really just want to give you some information to help you decide if CIMA certification is right for you. And then number two, if going through the Yale online program on your way to certification is a good fit for you. We want to answer any and every question you've got. So as Kelly mentioned, go ahead and start typing those in if you've got them. The earlier, the better. So she can kind of tee those up for me as we go through. I'll stop a few times along the way. And then we'll probably have some time at the end as well to do kind of a free-for-all, if you will. But that being said, I think it's better just go ahead and type in your questions so we can make sure that we get to in case we do run out of time. All right, so let's move forward. And first point of clarification, in case you didn't know, although I suspect most of you do, and I think Kelly alluded to it in the intro as well. Investments in Wealth Institute, that's your certifying body. At Yale, we provide a registered education course, IWI, for their certifications. They require you to go through education. Very few people are allowed to just sit for the exam. If you hold a CFA, you could choose to sit for the exam without going through education, but pretty much everybody else, not so much. So we offer a course that's been approved by IWI as registered education, and we include test prep, very comprehensive test prep, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So that really everything that you need if you go through the Yale program is in one place. There's enough content, as you're going to see, to keep you busy. The last thing I want you to do is be worrying about, well, am I studying the right thing? Do I have enough information? Do I need to buy something else? Excuse me, those kind of things. So it's all in one place. But IWI is your certifying body. If you're not familiar with them as an organization, this is just a little infographic, if you will, just some of the pertinent data. Almost 9,000 CIMA designees. I think they may have crossed that by now. 3,000 CPWAs, 30,000 learners, et cetera, et cetera. So go on their website. They've got a lot of great information. One of the things I really like about them, and I was drawn to when I was you as a practitioner, I guess I ran across them maybe 20, 25 years ago, is they like to go deeper with their content, from certifications to the journals they publish, et cetera. But don't make it so deep that practitioner can't understand it, but go deeper than what they're used to getting, especially on the academic side. So that was a big draw for me. And if that's a draw for you, again, I hope you'll check them out. Okay, so let's talk about CIMA certification a little bit, just in case you're still on the fence or just checking this out, considering other certifications as well. It's one of only a handful of accredited financial certifications in the U.S. Very few have gone through the rigor that IWI. CFP is. CFP board took CFP through that. many years ago as well. And I don't think I would have hooked up myself with IWI for CIMA and CPWA if they weren't accredited myself. I hold a number of designations, probably some of you do as well. Some of those, well, they're just not that impressive. They're not that rigorous. Maybe I got some information out of it, but pay $1,000, take a weekend or two, pass an easy test. This need to be more rigorous if we're going to take it to Yale and work with Toby and his crew to put this on. It is for investment professionals. Unlike CFP and CPWA, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's just investments. So about 35 years ago, maybe it's 40 now, when CIMA was first started, 3 professors at Wharton and some practitioners were working together, collaborating on some things. And I'm paraphrasing now. They thought CFA was probably a bit too much for most investment professionals. Look, if you're going to be a securities analyst, if you're going to be an institutional portfolio manager, think hedge fund manager managing an ETF of $1 billion over at Merrill or Nuveen or PIMCO or wherever. Okay, CFA, you need those skills. It's bottoms up. You're analyzing security statements all the time, financial statements, cash flow, all that stuff. So your quantitative skills have to be outstanding. And CFA was really designed for that. But for the rest of us mere mortals, particularly financial planners, financial advisors, investment consultants. Most of us are on the client-facing side. Now, some of us have more, well, I'm retired now from that part of the business, but some of us had more sales duties. Mine was more on the service side, running my own RIA for all those years. But it doesn't really matter whether you're sales or service or a bit of both. That CIMA was built for you. That doesn't mean it doesn't have quantitative and it doesn't go into some of the CFA areas. It just means it doesn't go into as many of them, and it definitely does not go as deep from a quantitative standpoint. Just a quick note, there's more information on IWI's website, but if you're looking to kind of build your case for your manager or to get approval or maybe even get reimbursement, top right-hand corner, there's some data on those that hold the CIMA certification versus those who don't. There's a lot more good information from third parties, even Cerulli, IT Group, etc., on IWI's website. So there should be some good information to help you build your case if you're going to need to get approval from someone before beginning. All right, the process is really easy. You do have to submit an application. This is an accredited certification. They are going to run a background check. If you're on the security side, you'll have a U4 most probably. That's probably the extent of what they're going to run. Just make sure that your application lines up, matches up on all the details with your U4. That's when I see people get stuck in this process. Once you get approved, and that takes about a week, by the way, for IWI to do all the things they need to do with your application, then they'll reach out and say, hey, Jim, congratulations, you've been approved as a CIMA candidate. Now we're going to tell Yale that you chose them as your education provider, which you will have done on the application itself. So that's kind of a one-step process there. It takes IWI about a week, and then it takes us about a week, give or take, a couple of days to get you set up at Yale. So the whole process to get started is about 2 weeks, unlike, again, some of those other designations out there where we just typed in our information, gave them a credit card, and we were up and running. So this is a much more formal process than that. Then you're going to complete the education course online that I'll show you in a minute. And then you're going to study for, sit for, pass your certification exam. Then they'll run one more background check, send you some licensing paperwork that you'll sign and send back, and then you'll be good to go. So not a complicated process, but it is a formal process given the weight of this certification. All right, let's talk a little bit. I've already alluded to some of these certifications, but let me just kind of nail down some big points for you in case you're considering. I think all of these are great, and I think maybe a handful of others outside of these 4 are really strong. If I hold a designation and I don't think it's super strong, I don't even put it in my bio, my LinkedIn or my CV or anything like that. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying there is a hierarchy to these certifications. I mentioned CFP, it's anything and everything financial planning. 18 months is normal. You could fast track that and maybe get it done in 9 or 12. It takes longer than CIMA, but I wouldn't say it's harder. I think the questions on average per question, if you will, on the CIMA exam, certification exam, I think they're harder than CFP. Now, some might say that CFP exam is harder because it covers a whole lot more material and is a longer exam. So I get that and I buy that argument. But on the question difficulty, I think the questions on the CIMA exam are more challenging. So you are going to have to study even if you're an experienced advisor. CPWA, the sister program here at Yale for financial certifications anyway, is not anything and everything financial planning. It's really financial planning for those of you working with high net worth clients. We've got a whole video on that. You can go over to the CPWA at Yale homepage and look more about that and watch the video too if you're so inclined. So that's really a deeper dive in challenges and potential solutions for your, say, $5 to $50 million client. And that's what CPWA is. That takes about 6 months. CIMA is actually about 4 to 5 months, according to our candidates, our participants, reporting back on the survey once they get going, and can spend about 8 to 10 hours a week consistently. So again, 8 to 10 hours a week consistently, 4 to 5 months, going to put you kind of in the sweet spot. And I'll share those numbers with you in a little more detail in a few slides. And then, as I mentioned before, CFA is a granddaddy of them all on investments, but that is a super deep dive. It's actually pretty wide now in terms of curriculum, and it is heavy, heavy quantitative. And if you're not sure, CIMA or CFA, either ask a question in the Q&A there, or maybe if it's more involved or you don't want to share all those personal details, I'm happy to have a quick Zoom with you or answer some questions by email with you, and you'll get my email information here in just a bit. So hopefully that helps a little bit with the difference between certifications. Kelly, were any of those questions, early questions about the certifications by chance?
Yes, we did have a few. So there's a question on the specifics on the exam, sort of who administers it and how often. So I think we'll hold that because I know you're going to cover that. But we do have a couple questions on sort of fit. Can you talk about the benefits or fit of a CIMA designation for family office professionals?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Well, I mean, if you've been in the business for a while and you don't need letters behind your name, which is probably the case for, I don't know, a quarter or a third of you, then it's about content. And I'll come back to content in a minute. CIMA is one of the more widely known certifications in the industry. Look, none of these are very well known to the public, even CFP. You and I think it is because we're very familiar with it. But to the public, less than 8% of the public knows what CFP is. So none of these are on the radar for most of the public. But I think in the industry, holding any one of these and a couple of others, I think gives you instant credibility. Now, that being said, because CIMA is deep dive in investments, not as deep as CFA, of course, I think it begs the question for you at the family office, or if you're looking to get into the family office space, how important are investments to your role or responsibilities in the family office? I think that will be the question that you want to ask. If most of your time is spent now, or you expect would be in the family office on investments, then I think you need that deep dive. CIMA, as you'll see in a little bit, is more of a top-down view of portfolio management, whereas I'm simplifying this, of course, but CFA is what I would say is more of a bottoms up. You're really breaking down, scrutinizing the financials of any asset or security and deciding whether that goes in the portfolio, the timing, the weighting, etc. CIMA is all these different portfolio methodologies and strategies. I'm going to pick mine or create my own hybrid, and then I'm going to pick fund managers, mutual funds, ETFs, hedge funds, managers, etc. And they're going to do all the micromanagement within. I'm just picking those managers to fill out different spots in the portfolio. So you could think of this as CIMAs hire CFAs, and that is true. That doesn't mean CIMAs are more important than CFAs. They're both really important. They just serve different roles. So that was kind of a long way to answer that question. I hope that helps, but feel free to ask a follow-up, or if you want to get more personal, we can take this to email maybe tomorrow or later today.
Okay. Do you have any advice for students who intend to use the CIMA as a career pivot? For example, those who have experience in finance, but who haven't been on the business/client facing side?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I think it depends on your age and your station in your career and your experience and those kind of things. But a couple of things are pretty clear to me after all these years in the business, 30 something years. Now, granted, I'm partial to designations. I started getting those early in my career. They did help me. So, that just kept going. And I became an educator eventually after I retired from my private practice. So I am partial to education and designations. That being said, those are two of the things you can get before you get a lot of experience, especially if you're young, or even if you're career switching and you don't have the experience. You can't, I mean, you can work harder and smarter than your colleagues and your competition, and that will help, although it doesn't necessarily translate in your resume because time is time, and so they don't add up how many hours you spent versus somebody else, another qualified candidate. But degrees, designations, especially these top end, more elite designations or certifications, I think that is instant credibility. It doesn't mean you know everything. It doesn't mean you're perfect. Doesn't mean you'll never make a mistake. Just means you went through some serious content. You passed a rigorous exam by an organization that takes all of this very, very seriously. So, of course, it doesn't hurt to have the name Yale next to how you went through and earned your CIMA. So I think it's a big advantage. It won't make all the difference, but I think it's certainly going to help. That's just been my experience.
Okay. And looks like last question for now. This is actually directed really toward you and your experience. Would you mind sharing your personal experience around why you stopped running your RIA and pivoted to the education space?
Yeah, good question. Well, I've been doing it for 27 years and ran my own private client business for 20 years. But about 22 years ago, I set up a CFP program at the University of Texas. They had never had one before. Then that led to a few different things. I became director of education for CFP board as practitioner in residence. So by then the momentum had really started moving for me on the education side. But as you can imagine, in education, you really can't make as much money as you can as a private practitioner. So it took a little while to figure out a model to where I could make enough money to make it make sense. Because I mean, I'm not young. I don't think I'm old. I'm 57. And so there was a transition there for me, as some of you will do if you're like me and you're in the same business for your whole career. I didn't want to leave our career, but I really enjoyed the education side. I do miss working with private clients, but there's only so many private clients, even in a successful firm, I can have. But on the education side, I've trained over 10,000 of yous out there. And then you guys are going on and helping your clients. So it's a better way for me to leverage things I've learned along the way. And that's more rewarding as long as I could get the money to match up or be close enough, then I would be good. So anyway, sorry for that long tail, but that's in a nutshell. That was a very curious and interesting question, but I appreciate it.
Okay, I think we're good for now. I think we can move on. Thanks everyone for the questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah, keep them coming. Keep them coming. Okay, so curriculum, really important. I mentioned this a minute ago when one of you was asking like how it would help. I believe you were looking at moving into the family office space, or you're already in the family office space. I think curriculum is really important. I mean, the credibility of the certification, the rigor is very important, but you can check the box on that one because CIMA is, even though some people call it a mini CFA, and it's different in so many different ways. But it's plenty rigorous and it's very challenging. It's considered highly credible. That being said, I think just as important is the content. It needs to be a match for you. You're going to spend 100 to 200 hours, some more. So the cost is one thing. This is not a cheap or inexpensive certification, but it's not 15, 20, 25,000, especially when you throw academic credits into the situation for some other certifications, which is not the case here at Yale. I think your opportunity cost here is probably most important for most of you. Certainly more significant than the actual cash outlay, even for those of you who are not being reimbursed. So you want to make sure you get the content right. This is the way IWI breaks it up into 5 sections, or they call domains, and then there's a whole bunch of sections underneath it. And I'll show you, I'll give you an invite here on the next slide, I think it is. But we start with fundamentals. It's just, especially for those of you who didn't do business school like so many of us did, statistics, some algebra, applied finance is really kind of time value of money, history of the global markets, economics, a basic review there, just to kind of get you back in to thinking about these things and lay a foundation for some of the more micro applications we're going to do in a little bit. Number 2 is investment. So think Series 7 review and then some. So it's not basic, it's not advanced, it's somewhere in between basic and intermediate. And you saw a lot of this in any college investment course you took and in preparing for your Series 7 and your Blue Sky Laws exam. So that's what section or domain 2 is. Then we get into the fun stuff, portfolio theory and behavioral finance. They mixed the two of them together. Oh, it was probably 8 years ago now. And I'm glad they did, because look, portfolio theory is important. It's very foundational. I think most, if not all of us, use it in some way, but it's incomplete, it's lacking, it has inconsistencies, and assumptions aren't always good. So, that's a lot there, but it is very important, and it provides the building blocks for a lot of the methodologies we use in managing a client's portfolio. That being said, if we can't manage our own emotions, our own behaviors, and even those of our clients, then it probably doesn't matter anyway, because one of us is going to torpedo the whole relationship or the portfolio anyway. So marrying those together, I think, is a really smart move on the curriculum side. Section 4, then, after we've got a nice foundation and some application in section 3, we're going to do math. So there's a lot less math on this exam than there used to be. When I started working with CIMA candidates, about the time I got my CIMA certification, I was estimating about 40% of the exam was calculation or math related. I'm going to say it's down to 15%, 20 tops. So that has come down. So that shouldn't scare you if you talk to some friends or colleagues that are like, yeah, I did my CIMA back in the 90s, and yeah, it was great, but man, it was a lot of math, and really had to go back and study that out. Okay, they wouldn't necessarily talk to you in that voice, but you know what I'm saying. That being said, that's old school. That was a long time ago. There's not as much math. If you're nervous about the math, or you haven't done this kind of math in a while, don't worry about that. There's a workbook we have in the course from IWI from several years ago. And if you can do just about everything in that workbook, you're going to probably be totally fine on most, if not all, the questions they throw at you. But we've got lots of practice questions for you as well. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then last, it's kind of bringing it all together. There's not a whole lot of new content in domain 5, but we need to talk about how this all works together with and on behalf of your clients. How do you implement it, like an investment policy statement and those kind of things? So it's just meant to bring it all together. So that being said, here's the offer. If you don't have this kind of multicolored, multi-page PDF version of the line-by-line topic list, you need to get it. You need to review that before you apply for candidacy, just to make sure you're barking up the right tree, that this is the right certification for you in terms of content. I have no doubt that for most of you, if you spend 10 minutes on this, literally reading every single line and just continuing to ask yourself, does this make sense? Is this going to be helpful? Will this make a difference in my practice or what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis? Will this help me serve my clients better or bring in more or better clients? Just keep asking yourself that section after section, and sooner or later, the light's going to come on and you're going to go, yeah, this is it. Not everything looks perfectly on, but most of it for sure. That's a match. And some of you might, after 2 pages, let alone 5, say, I don't know, a third of it maybe. Look, if you're down there, if you're solidly under half of it, I don't think it's right for you. Doesn't mean you wouldn't learn, doesn't mean you wouldn't benefit, but you're going to put in so much time. There may be better things for you to do with 100 or 200 hours given your busy life. So if you don't have it, shoot me an email there, jim.dobbs@yale.edu. Happy to send you a copy of this most recent version so you can see what this is all about in more detail. Math, I mentioned the formula sheet. Well, I haven't mentioned the formula sheet yet, but here it is. I will send you the formula sheet as well if you don't have a copy. You can get these off of our website at Yale and IWI's website, but you kind of got to go find them. So if it's easier, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to send these to you. Quick note on the formula sheet. So you will have the formula sheet in front of you while you test, and even all of the descriptions will be next to the formula. So that's nice. You don't have to memorize those, but you do need to know what they measure, how they measure something, when to use them as measurements, and then you need to, of course, be able to apply them if they give you information and a fact pattern. But what they're going to do more often than not is give you some information, call it a mini fact pattern or client situation, give you some expectations, some constraints, those kind of things, and then force you to show that you know which one of these metrics is best to use, most appropriate to use in that situation. And then plugging in the numbers, since you have the formula right in front of you, is not so hard. It's really mostly about picking the right formula to use on any particular question, because they won't tell you, sometimes they do, but most of the times they don't tell you, okay, so plug in the CAPM formula or the beta formula and solve this. You're going to have to know that's what you're supposed to use. But again, plenty of practice questions. So that really shouldn't be an issue for you on the exam. Oh, by the way, speaking of the exam and difficulty and all that, just so you know, I'm a firm believer in making practice harder than the game. So when you get to the test prep in our program, we're going to work you over a bit harder in terms of difficulty, more content and more difficult than what we think you're going to see on the exam. How do we know what you're going to see on the exam? Well, we just talked to you guys. Now, we can't ask certain questions like what exactly was that question? How was it worded? What were the answer choices? That's too far. That's where IWI draws the line, but we can certainly ask a whole lot of things around that to make sure that we are preparing you for what's more likely versus less likely to show up, and kind of more or less at the right level of difficulty. And then we just ratchet the difficulty up a little bit. That way, when you get to the test itself, the certification exam, when the lights are on and the camera's on and the timer's on, and most of us don't perform as well under that pressure, it's okay because you've been practicing at a harder level. And you'll see that comment in our discussion board, and even on our website, we've posted some quotes from past candidates who can attest to that as well. So anyway, if you don't have a detailed content outline or the formula sheet, send me an email. I'll be happy to get that over to you. All right, more formula sheet. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it is important for expectations that you know mostly what we're trying to do. Now, we have a whole lot of goals and objectives. These are just 3, but I think they're 3 of the most, if not the most important goals for us as a program and a leadership. We want to cover all of those 500 plus core topics. When you add the subtopics and subtopics, you're easily over 1,000. We want to cover all of those in either the course or the test prep. Sometimes it's both. There's a method to that madness, if you will, but we want to cover all of them. And we hope at the most appropriate level. Some of them are pretty light, but some of them need to go pretty deep, either because we think it's important in practice or it's going to show up on your exam that way. The number 2 objective is my favorite. It's just the hardest to measure is, can you take this new knowledge and the tools, skills, resources that you're going to have coming out of this and apply them in your job or your practice right now and get better at what you do right now. And the overwhelming subjective, it's hard to make it objective. Subjective feedback is yes, it does. So I think we're on the right track. There's always ways that we can improve that. And then finally, I was in your chair. I got all these designations while I was in practice too. At the end of the day, it is going to be about passing the certification exam. I totally get it. You start out with a whole bunch of great ideas and intentions. And then as the time grows shorter and you get closer to your exam date, which we'll talk about in a minute, it is going to be about passing the test. So I designed the program. Toby and I designed it specifically with that in mind. All right, let's do some nuts and bolts and we'll see if we've got any other early questions. Well, early, we're about halfway through. About $6,000. So again, not super expensive, especially for a Yale program. I would say this is a bargain, or at least very cost competitive for a Yale program. Not for academic credit, not as a part of a degree program at Yale. It's executive education leading to a certification if you pass the certification exam, but 6,000, and that covers everything. So again, you don't need any other test prep as people ask different programs. Nope, with our program, everything you have is all you need in that regard. Once you're accepted as a candidate, you can come into our program at any time. Now, 99+% of the people who become accepted as a candidate move into the Yale program immediately. There could be a rare situation where you want to get the expense on the books, but you really can't start studying for 2 or 3 months. Yeah, we can handle that. But almost everybody applies, gets accepted, moves right into the program. But we don't have start dates like enrollment periods. You're going to start whenever you're ready. And I think the best test for that is just look at your schedule over the next 2 or 3 months and just ask yourself, is that any better or any worse than any other time of the year for me as a practitioner? Certain things that you can anticipate, tax preparation if you're in that kind of business, or management duties that you have, which might be seasonal. I get it. You can't predict the clients or the prospects becoming clients. Well, that's a good challenge to have. So I get it. Some of it's unpredictable. But if you look over the next 2 to 3 months and you go, yeah, this looks fine. It looks normal. It's always hectic. It's always busy, but this isn't any worse than any other time of the year. Okay, well, that would be a good time to start. But if you see something right in front of you that's like, that is going to take a lot of time and I don't know how much study I'm going to get, I would wait till you clear that hurdle and then jump in. And then the program fee of $59.95 does cover you for access in the Yale program for 1 year, 365 days. Nobody should really need that. Again, with 4 to 5 months being very typical, once you can start putting in 8 to 10 hours a week. But I get it. Things happen. Family things happen that you don't expect, good or bad. Practice, you take on a new partner, you get rid of a partner, you have to bring in a new associate, you've got onboarding, you bring in a lot of clients, all that stuff happens. So we've given you, in our estimation, over twice as much time as you should need to finish this up. And that being said, there's a safety net here. You can buy access for another year for $2,250, I think is what we're charging right now, $2,250 buys you a whole nother year. But you don't really even need to do that. All you got to do is pass the course online. I'll show you that in a minute. The Yale course, not the certification exam. And then just download all of our test prep, as long as you don't share it with anybody, because it is just for you. And as long as we don't see it out there on the web really prominently, then we're going to keep it this way. You just download the test prep study off your own hard drive, and then you don't really have to worry about having access to the Yale programs. But again, 1 year should be plenty for you. Okay, as you're staring at flexibility and all that fun stuff, let's see if we've got any more questions.
Yeah, we do. So I still have the one we're holding about the details on the exam itself, which I know you're getting close to. But this is actually a great slide for this question to come in. Why do students choose the Yale program over the Chicago program?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a couple of things. One is test prep. I mean, I think now I'm totally partial, totally biased, but I don't think anybody's got test prep like we do. And as you'll see in the comments on the discussion board and even in on our website, quotes from past candidates, we work you harder than we probably have to. And I think that the result is a nice pass rate. So you could try to shortcut it, but I don't know if I would do that. I want to make sure that when you go through our program, if you fail, you failed it because you didn't put in enough time and you didn't follow our directions. You didn't follow our guidance. We've been doing this, as Kelly said, for thousands of people. So, so that being said, test prep is one. The other is this asynchronous component. The other program or programs, because they've come and gone, as we've seen at Yale over the years, they've almost always, if not always, had a synchronous component. You got to show up here, you got to show up there. It's timed. We're doing this over these weeks or this month and whatever. I thought when I set this up 8, 9 years ago, the idea was freedom and flexibility. You're going to study when you want to. I need to give you guardrails. I need to give you best practices. I even need to give you a map on how to get through the content, at least at the test prep stage. But I want to give you total flexibility. And my thought was, I'm probably going to have people coming in this program that want to finish this in a month. And then some people are just going to get bogged down at work or whatever, and they may take a whole year. Or maybe they're just slower learners or more methodical. I don't want the slow people frustrating the fast trackers, and I don't want the fast trackers freaking out, stressing out the slower paced candidates. So none of that will matter to you. You can get through 2 weeks as the record. I'm not really issuing a challenge there. I'm just saying that if you're exceptional, you can knock this out in a couple of weeks. Now, again, that's a rare situation. And then we've had candidates take a year or longer with way over 500 hours, according to them, because maybe they were brand new in the business. They never took an investment course. They just squeaked by the Series 7, and here they are, really chomping at the bit if they're going to take CIMA next. So those are kind of the two biggest reasons I've seen. Well, I'll throw in a third. Some people just want to be associated with Yale. I get it. And yeah, you'll have this association for the rest of your life, not as a former student, unless you were officially a student, but you're a participant in a program, and you can carry that with you in your LinkedIn and your Vita and your bio for forever. So good question.
Okay, I think that's it. Thanks.
All right, so you've had a chance to stare at this, and we've even talked about most of these points. You can download, copy, save, and print everything. You really only need to be online when you're taking the course level test, not the certification exam, but the course level test to pass the Yale course. And then again, you can study whenever and wherever you want. That's the whole idea, is to give you maximum flexibility with best practices and guidelines, just based on my working with thousands of students on this certification alone. Like, what seems to work best for most people, what definitely doesn't work. There are plenty of those. All right. Study time, we talked about it. We talked around it, but here are the numbers. If you were to do a bell-shaped curve, a population-based curve, 100 to 200 hours would easily capture most people in terms of total study time. Now, that's from the day you log in for the first time to the day you pass your certification exam. So if you don't know and you're like, well, I'm no dummy, but I mean, maybe I wasn't the sharpest guy in the class, but I was in the top 5 or what. Okay, well, maybe you're 150 hours, 125 hours, but 100 to 200 is probably what you want to pencil in on your study schedule. But as I mentioned before, some breeze through this fast, and some it takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. Just depends on you, what you know coming in the door, your study habits, test taking skills. All of that plays a role in terms of how fast you can get through this material, get ready for and pass that certification exam. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the course, and we'll do the test prep on the next page. In terms of the course, we use a couple of different texts. One is my old text from Wiley there, you see. It's the only CIMA text that's ever been put together. That being said, let me say this. It's a textbook. It's not a test prep book. When they asked me to do that, when the IWI's leadership at the time asked me to do that text, the idea was create a master's level textbook, not a test prep. So that's what it is. We use a couple of other texts They're all available in PDF form in the course itself, the online course. You can buy, well, that's the only text still in print, still being printed out. Amazon, I don't know, $125, something like that. I don't get any royalties for that. All that stuff's over. But you can, again, download everything in PDF form, as I mentioned on the last slide. So that's what we use as text. And those readings altogether is like 2,400 pages or something like that. That's really your library. It's not like the old school days where, teachers, professor said, go read 3 chapters and I'll see you on Thursday. It's really, I don't think we learn best that way. Video, audio, visual, those are the most popular and meaningful mediums these days for most people. So if you want to read, great. I've got thousands of pages for you. But we're going to really key in, especially on the educational course side, with these video lessons. So it's just like if you were in New Haven, we were all in the class, but no, we just went down into the Yale studio and we all recorded down there and we put it in video form, and now you have it on demand. So I think the cool thing about that is if Toby Moskowitz says something really, really important, and you're like, I think that was really important, but I wasn't really listening fully. I was a little distracted. Well, that's easy. You just slide it back and listen to it again, watch it again, and do it again and again if you need to. So I think there's some real convenience aspects to the on-demand, which you don't get live, obviously, because when somebody's going, they're not going to back up for you because there's 50 other people or 100 other people in the audience. So I think the on-demand works really well for most of us. Then there are section tests. Right now we have 11 required tests in this course, and you're going to take those after watching a series of videos. You can take them as many times as you need to. They're not proctored. They're just right there in the LMS, or learning management system, as it's called or known as. Really, the intent there is not to prepare you for the certification exam. That's what comes next. That's just to say, hey, look, you're not in New Haven. We didn't see you sign in. We just need to make sure that you're doing something, and we have some assessment form to say that you passed this executive education course at Yale School of Management. Once you pass the 11th test, you get an email. Hey, Jim, congratulations. You passed the Yale course. We've just sent your name to IWI and said, hey, Jim has passed the course. He's actually eligible to schedule his certification exam. Now, between you and me, Jim's not ready to do that because he hadn't done the test prep yet. He's just eligible to do that. And at that point, your test prep will become visible to you. It will not have been visible to you up to that point, because I just want you focusing on the 30 to 40 hours it's going to take you to watch these lessons and get your footing, because we're going to get into all the nitty-gritty details next, and that's test prep. So if you spend 30 to 40 hours and you're spending 150 hours total, then you're spending over 100 hours in the test prep alone. It's clear to me that the vast majority of candidates in our program are going to spend more time in test prep than in the course, because there's just so much to go through. Now, of the 20 sections that they have now, I give you videos up front telling you over the last year, yep, on all those 500 topics, these are the most highly probable to show up. And here's what I think about those. These are kind of in the middle. It could go either way, whether you get a question on this or not. And then these things haven't been tested like in forever. So study them in this upcoming slide deck that you've got in front of you and in your practice questions, but I wouldn't dwell on these things. And you're going to just create a list, and that will help you get through the 20 sections much quicker, and with much more focus on what is likely and not to show up on your exam. And we do give you 30, 60, and 90-day test prep schedules. Most of our participants do admit, well, I started with one of those, like I didn't know, so I just went 60 days, and most people do. And then I either sped up or slowed down, and then some sections just took me longer than others, and then some surprised me and I didn't need as long. So you're just going to feel your way through. It's part of assessment. And the practice questions, there are lots of practice questions after each one of those 20 sections of content, and you're going to self-assess as you go through. We have many mock exams worth of questions, but I chose, after trial and error in the early years, to just have one full length mock exam. And why I do that is I want you to assess as you go through, as opposed to going through the back door like most of us did in our series exams. Well, let me just start with their practice test, see how I do, because maybe if I get an 89 on my first attempt, I'm ready. That doesn't work on these harder exams. These exams make you think, not just recall and memorize. And so I need you seeing all of my practice questions, all of them, every single one of them, hopefully at least twice, and you start by doing it section by section. That way, when you get to the full-length mock exam, if you've done everything we asked you to do, including going through and marking up those 1,500 test prep slides, the mock exam is almost an afterthought at that point. You should know really well where you are and how close you are to being ready. And then the mock exam ought to just nail that down too. I got a 92 first attempt, no, within my 4 hours, and not looking at my notes, I'm ready to go. And as you'll see, if you get in the 70s first attempt and you've done everything we've asked you to do, you're probably ready to go because our exam is pretty tough, our mock exam. All right, now the test, which one of you asked about before. New format as of August of last year. By the way, pass rates have been a little bit higher since the new exam came in. 110 multiple choice questions, 100 are scored, beta or 10 or beta unscored items like all the certification exams do. You have 4 hours. It's about as much time per question as you had on the last one, which was 5 hours and a bit longer on the number of questions. You can take this at home, although I don't generally recommend that, as you'll see in our course and what to do when you're getting ready for the test section that in video that I have in there. Pearson VUE does the distance, the testing centers as an option. I think that's the better route. Pass rates are higher there. I think there's a number of reasons for that. Online testing at home, for example, you wouldn't want to do it. You're probably not going to be allowed to do it at work because of all the firewalls and all that. The proctor does have to come up through your system. You've got to scan the room. They got to take control of part of your computer. Don't think many work companies would allow you to do that. And it can take up to an hour to get you all situated depending on your setup. So if you're like me and don't wear patience well all the time, I think it's easier just to go into the Pearson Testing Center like we did for so many other tests. You already know the drill. I'd prefer you to do that, but you have the option. Calculator policy, you will need one for sure on this exam. It has to be a financial calculator, it can't be a scientific calculator. The most common that I see in our program are the HP 10B2 Plus and the TI BA2 Plus. The whole list is in the candidate handbook. If you send me an email, I'll send you the candidate handbook if you don't already have that. And that lists all the 15 or 18 approved calculators that you can use. Look, if you're not feeling great about your calculator or you need to go buy a new one, you haven't used it in a long time or whatever, go to this website. It's free. Professor out of Colorado does a great job of giving specific examples for about a dozen of the most popular financial calculators, including these, at tvmcalcs.com. Great website. Spend half an hour to an hour refreshing yourself on your calculator, the specific buttons, where they are. Sometimes order is important, depending on the problem you're solving, that kind of thing. I think that will be time well spent. So tvmcalcs.com if you need a refresher before you jump into our program, or if you're in the program and then you start using the calculator and you're fumbling around, then take some time out and go to his website and brush up. That'll help a lot. All right.
Hey, Jim,
where's my help?
Jim, before you move on, just the rest of the question about the testing that was submitted earlier.
Yeah.
Can you just clarify if the test is just offered all the time or if it's only offered during certain times of the year?
Good. And I think you maybe even mentioned that up front, and I forgot that one. So good question. So it's available anytime after you're qualified. After you're qualified means pass a registered education course. That's why I said once you pass our required 11 short tests in our course, online course, then you're eligible to schedule your exam. And then you can do that on any day of the week, as long as Pearson VUE or ProctorU does the home testing, the distance testing, as long as they have a spot available with either Proctor, or if it's Pearson VUE, they actually have to have a seat on the day and time you want, then you can test. So good question. You're going to test whenever you're eligible and ready. All right, is that it for now?
Yes, we are all caught up. Thanks.
All right, just a few minutes to go. Let's just plow through these last couple of slides, and then we'll just open it up for any last questions. So, where's my help really important? Look, this is a distance self-learning type of program. It's not for academic credit. It's not priced for that either. So there's only so much we can do in terms of back-end support, if you will. Since I've done this for a long time, many years, and tons and tons of candidates, I kind of already know where many, not all of you, of course, but where a lot of you are going to get tripped up on certain things, especially as it comes to the test. So there are videos, short snippets, little study ideas that I can give you, especially in certain content areas, to help you get through that. The discussion board is great, in my opinion, in this program, also in our CPWA program. It's not just a discussion board for you to kick things around with each other, but it's good as an FAQ, because if I see some good discussions now, and CIMA, Eric is one of the other professors, and he's going to work with me in monitoring the discussion board. But if we get a good dialogue going, and especially if it's a commonly asked question, we're going to leave that in there. We may clean it up a little bit, but we're going to leave that. So it's like an FAQ. So if you're in section 8 or whatever, and you're like, oh, the cap end's killing me, I've never seen this before. Well, just go into the discussion board. That would be your first good idea, and just start plowing through those questions. What were people asking about the SML and everything else in there? I think that is a really great help. It's a tutorial, if you will, that we have designed over the years in that regard. Now, if you ever have questions on logins, or I forgot how long my window is, or anything like that, even study plans, that's unlimited. You've got Yale and Dobbs education staffs available 8 to 5 Eastern, Monday through Friday. Canvas Tech Help is basically 24/7 if you're having any issue with how the online program looks to you. And then ask the expert. And so you do have a limit there on questions to faculty. Right now, Eric Rabanian, who holds CIMA CFP, he's actually an attorney and an MBA and a practitioner himself. He's brilliant, especially on the math side. 12 questions. We beta tested that, and I can tell you with CIMA, it's about 3.5%, 4% of you are asking 12 questions, and we monitor that. So yeah, I could bring that down, and it probably wouldn't raise that percentage too much in terms of how many of you are asking whatever the limit is. But the point is, most people aren't going to even need 12 questions the way we've got all of this figured out. But you do have that. So we call those your lifelines. And so you can ask, and I encourage you to ask all of them. You just want to pick them carefully. Is it really important to me in practice or on the exam? And I've looked around a little bit. I can't find the answer. I'm going to reach out to Eric and use one of my lifelines. But that being said, and finally on this slide, if you are the type of person, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just a learning style and preference, you're like, I really do better when I have interaction with my professor on a regular basis as I move through a program like this, then we are not the program for you. We're not set up or designed or priced for that. So I want to be very candid about that with you. All right, I'll let you read about the program faculty on your own. Toby's brilliant. I've worked with him for about 20 years now on different certification and other projects together. Roger Ibbetson's a legend. Of course, we're going to have him do history of the markets in this program. John Nersessian's great on walking you through a lot of the mathematical metrics. And then the other faculty are their full bios are on our Yale CIMA program website. Feedback is very important. We're not perfect. We're trying to be all the time, but we take this very, very seriously. There's more quantitative metrics there on our homepage as well. And then we already talked about the process. It takes about 2 weeks because you're going to apply for candidacy through IWI, and then you're going to end up with us, and it takes us about a week to get you set up too. Oops, there it goes. All right, and then contact information. Again, send me an email to either of these emails if you want or need the topics list, the formula sheet, and or the candidate handbook. Happy to send you that, and then just kind of a summary of the key points from this info session. I think Kelly is recording, so she's going to send you a link to the recording of this in the next week or so, along with the slides. So I'll stop rambling, and Kelly will see if you've got any thoughts or if they've got any more questions.
Yeah, not seen any questions come in quite yet. We do have a few minutes, as Jim mentioned, so we're happy to just kind of hang out here for, another 2 or 3 minutes if anyone wants to ask about anything.
Anything, look, anything's fair game. Again, it's
Yeah.
about opportunity. You've got a lot of choices in life and in your career. So I just want to make sure that you're getting the information you need to make a smart choice. And we certainly want you to come and join us at Yale if it's a good fit. I mean, if it's not a good fit or CIMA's just not, you're just not like all in on this is the right certification right now, well, then we understand. And maybe we'll see you down the road. But if it is good fit, yeah, no, we would love to have you come join us. It is going to be challenging, even for those of you who are experienced in the business. But hey, anything that's good, it's going to have a challenge to it anyway, right?
Yeah, I think maybe I would just add, even though, as you explained quite thoroughly, the program is designed to be sort of self-paced and asynchronous. I just want to reiterate that there are a lot of built-in sort of guardrails, study guides, plans. There's a lot of communications that go out to really, help keep you on course. And also, there are other people in the program as well at the same time. So.
Yeah.
I know sometimes people form study groups on their own and, things like that do happen as well. So you're not, just kind of out there all on your own.
Yeah, no, Kelly's right. And we send you monthly emails, sometimes more than that. And for your first about 4 or 5 months, I'm sending you weekly announcements to the cohort that you started with. And that's basically just a month that you came into the program. I'm sending you weekly reminders for the first 4 or 5 months with study tips and thoughtful ideas as you move through the course and then eventually start into your test prep content, just to stay on top of mind and hopefully give you some guidance along the way.
Okay, well, we're not seeing any questions come in, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up for the day. So yeah, thanks a lot, Jim. This, great session today. And, thanks to everyone for joining us and asking lots of questions. We always really appreciate that. As Jim mentioned, we have our contact information here on the screen, so please do feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. And we are recording this and we will be sharing the recording and the slides in the next few days. And yeah, just also to reiterate what Jim said, obviously we would love to see you in our program, but for the reasons we went over today, it's important to kind of find the program and the path that's the best fit for you. And so I just want to say thanks again for joining us and have a great day.